welcome to the Andy Staples Show. It's an in-person edition. I'm here with Ari Wasserman. We're in Chicago. We got meetings for The Athletic. He's wearing a hat of a hotel that's too expensive for me to go to.
That's not true at all.
Okay,
that's a lie.
I could probably afford a room there on a down night.
Yeah, like
not
Tuesday.
during F1.
Yeah, maybe Tuesday.
Yeah, they're having an F1 race in Vegas. They're not going to let me in a room.
Can you explain that to me? Like, what are they just going to clear out the entire strip and drive 400 miles down the strip?
Yes. They did it in Miami Beach. There were lots of really cool interstate exit cloverleafs overlooking the race.
To me, it's like, what about the median partitions of the streets? Like, do they have to block those off and everything?
I would think so.
Yeah, I mean, that would be...
And that's been Talking Formula One with Andy and Ari.
Yeah, I know. It's funny, I was talking to a buddy about Formula One this morning. I'm like, do people really watch this?
Yes.
And it's like, it's a huge thing. So, I mean...
Wait, people really watch a sport where the same team wins over and over and over again?
Is that how it is in Formula One, or is it just...
Oh, yes. Football? You don't know about Red Bull Racing?
No, I don't know anything about it.
Yeah, Red Bull Racing, they finish 1-2 in every race. There's 2 drivers per team. They finish 1-2.
So it's like a Ricky Bobby...
in Cal Naughton Jr., yes. Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Exactly.
Well, but at least both of them get a chance to be first. Instead of just
usually one guy's first.
Do they run the slingshot play? Or?
They don't do the shake and bake. So, now, because we're talking about Formula One, that's where Borat comes from. I'm dying on names today. I can't think of anybody's name right now. I've been flying all day. You can tell I'm airplane.
That's what I love about you, Andy. You just get off the airplane, you get in a cab, and you're in downtown Chicago. Let's podcast. Let's ride. So
that's exactly right. Well, I'm actually looking across the street. There's a rooftop bar / restaurant.
I think that we are going there have to go at some point as a team. So that's good. Yeah.
Well, maybe we got to scout it out. I don't know. But we need to talk about teams that win everything and that always win and that keep getting better and keep dominating. So the Formula One intro is actually a pretty good one because it sounds like the Georgia Bulldogs.
Mm-hmm.
The Georgia Bulldogs got a commitment on Monday from Dylan Raiola, the number 1 quarterback in the class of 2024, the number 1 recruit in the class of 2024. He was once committed to Ohio State. He then decommitted. He is the son of former Nebraska great Dominic Raiola.
Mm-hmm.
His uncle is on Nebraska's staff right now, but he did not go to Nebraska. He is going to be a Georgia Bulldog. He posts the graphic on Instagram, home.
I was appalled by that.
Athens is home.
I was so appalled by that I got accused of being a Nebraska homer a few times in the comments of my column.
Well, Nebraska's not home either. He's from Phoenix.
No, I know, but home is not necessarily a location. It's it's like I'm not from Israel, but I mean, I guess you could say that would be a home of mine since my mother's from there.
Okay.
Right? My family lives there. It's a personal connection.
Right.
And not about your address. But my point is that Athens is not home. Okay. Home. And I understand that home is.
I don't know. You've never had the biscuits in Mama's Boy? It sure as hell feels like home when you're eating those.
We're talking about biscuits, and we can just shut the column off and just talk about that. But I just like the whole idea that I have about college football, and we discuss this all the time, Andy. It's like parity and NIL and expanded playoff, and it's like, if we can't even fix this, then I think all the other stuff...
You mean the best players going to the best school?
Yeah, but I'm just
the exact opposite of the NFL draft?
Yeah.
It'd be like if the Kansas City Chiefs got to draft first.
Well, that's what's happening in college football, but they get to draft first through 11.
Pretty much.
That's what it's like. So, and it's just like Nebraska in this scenario has all those personal connections.
Yes.
This kid visited there 6 times in 2 years, which is a lot for an unofficial visit. It seemed for a while there that they had a legitimate chance. They had all these opportunities. And it's like, if you can't close there, then what the hell is Nebraska supposed to do?
Nebraska has stunk out loud for how many years, and Georgia's winning national titles.
How do you fix that? By getting players like this. That's how you fix that problem.
Well, you could offer them more money through NIL. That's actually how you fix it.
I still don't think that's going to work.
I don't think it'll work either for everybody. I think it'll work for some. I think
because Nebraska would be one of the ones that you might actually assume would be good at that.
Yes, I think they'd be very good.
It's like, to me, and I'm not faulting Dylan Raiola.
Although Dylan Raiola's dad played in the NFL for a long time, he hadn't any money.
Well, also,
so NIL money, you could dangle that, but I'm not sure that's going to be the number one factor on his mind.
So here's the thing about this whole thing, Andy, that got me all fired up, and it's this. It's not like Georgia, despite the fact that they've been Death Star good the last 2 years, has been the beacon of quarterback development, right?
No.
So even when he was originally committed to Ohio State.
They got a walk-on drafted this year.
They did. Higher than I thought he was going to go.
He went.
Yeah.
I think
right?
Stetson Bennett's going to play in the NFL for a little while.
You do?
Yeah, I do.
Starter or just like be a backup?
I think he's going to be on a roster for a while.
Yeah. Well, I think that's probably fair to say.
Yeah.
But my point is that like, if I were Dylan Raiola, I would do the same thing. You are the person. You have a dream to go to the NFL and be who people compare you to.
Mm-hmm.
You want to go to the place that is the path of least resistance.
This is the NBA, by the way. This is how NBA free agency works too. Dream teams form. And that's exactly what recruits have been doing for the last 15 years. You've written about it. They cluster.
Yeah, they cluster, but it's more than ever before now. It's absurd now.
Yeah.
Like, we're talking 60% of the top 100 players in the country go to a group of 4 or 5 schools every year.
That's exactly right.
So, this is exactly what was always going to happen, I guess, right? You know, he was either going to go to Ohio State, then he opened his recruitment up, and he ends up at... And I guess if things don't work out at Georgia, he can just end up at Alabama. But what do you do as a team to build in this world? Because if Nebraska can't close this, and I understand why they didn't, but if they can't get Rule, the whole Rule thing...
Now, here's what Matt Rule has to do. And the problem is it's not an instant fix. You can't do this right away. You got to make NFL draft picks. The reason they all go to Georgia, to Ohio State, to Alabama, in LSU, not quite as many numbers, but they get a lot of these guys too. They put people in the top of the NFL draft.
But there is
that is why it is the best recruiting tool in the world.
But we also just got done doing the 3-star U thing where we added up. There is no statistical or data-driven argument that a 5-star prospect is more likely to get drafted going to one of these schools. It is a perception.
But wouldn't you want to just...
Yes, I'm just
eliminate all doubt?
Of course. That's what I always say to Mitch whenever he goes, well, it doesn't really matter where you go if you're a 5. Like, I get it. You want to go to the place that has the best environment, the best culture.
No, if you're a 5-star, there's basically a 1 in 2 chance that you're going to get drafted in the NFL at the end of
regardless of where you go to college.
Right.
But it is built into the brains of every kid, right or wrong, that they have a much better chance of achieving that goal by going to the
because they keep watching people go.
Yes. So how do you break that? That's the thing. Yeah. It's like we always talk about parity. We've spent so much time. You know who broke
that? Georgia.
No, Georgia was always talented. And
Georgia was always talented, but Alabama was always this talented. Alabama was this 6-7 years ago.
Somebody even commented on this story, and I took exception to it, of like, Georgia had less wins than Nebraska between 2008 and 2014 or something like that. And like that stat might actually be true.
Pelini won a bunch.
I know, and that stat might actually be true. But like even if you go back 5 years ago, people were annoyed that Georgia was in the conversation with Alabama when they hadn't won anything. Like Georgia is not a lovable underdog.
Yeah, that was more of a we think they should be doing better, but
they've never been a team that it's appalling that it took this long for them to win a championship. But the thing that I always go back to, Andy, is that like the last 5 or 6 years in this sport now, I don't even know if you can compare it to 2005.
Well, the problem is
it's not the same thing anymore.
You can't have a draft. Even if you make them employees, I don't think you could start a draft in this day and age. Like, if suddenly the NBA decided to abolish this draft or the NFL decided to abolish this draft, you'd never get it back. No one would be down with, you are now forced to go work for this company.
But your number one thing here, Andy, has always been, give it time, things will change. And I buy that. Nothing stays the same forever.
Yeah.
But I'm looking at the current situation that the sport is in right now. And every single 5-star prospect...
when I say things will change, I just mean the identity of the super teams will change.
Yeah, but you think that in 15 years or 20 years
I don't know that there won't be super teams.
No, I know, but do you think the identities of those super teams are going to be USC, Notre Dame, Oregon, and Texas?
What was it 20 years ago? USC and Texas were among them.
So while we're in this, and maybe this is just my problem, but while we're in this scenario, where every top 100 player in the country is programmed to automatically favor the 5 schools that are in the place right now, how do you break that trend?
You hire Lincoln Riley at USC. That's one way to do it.
Yeah, and he got his,
he had a Heisman Trophy winner and played for the conference championship.
Yeah,
and now they've gotten some people out of the transfer portal and perhaps
still signed 1/4 of how many top 100 players.
I know.
I don't know. Like, and I know what you say. You hire the right guy, but it's like if Matt Rule, is that not a sexy hire? Like,
how many 5-star recruits has Matt Rule ever?
No,
signed?
I know, but like it inspires hope.
That's not his style. By the way,
this is never going to happen anywhere else. Or meaning like. The
Ari's
number
pointing
one
to his column, which is on my iPad.
The number one overall player in the entire country who plays the quarterback position, having the personal connection to Nebraska and considering them this closely any other way. Like, how many times in a 20-year period does this happen for a program? Once every 30 years, maybe? Like, this is it's just like, okay, so he goes to Georgia, a team that has multiple 5-star quarterbacks on its roster that stink.
That may or may not play for Georgia.
Ever. So it's just like, what are you even signing up for? You're signing up for the perception of going to the best place that wins the most. It's not necessarily even the greatest place for quarterbacks.
There are players who will buck that trend. But there aren't many, and I don't blame them. You said the same thing.
I don't blame him. Yeah. It's not a Dylan Raiola.
But there are players who will say, I want to be the first. I want to be the one who changes things around here. But it's not many. And, I go back to like when Tim Tebow committed to Florida. He was a lifelong Florida fan. Now, I don't know if he would have committed to Florida if Mike Shula hadn't been fired at Alabama. He really liked that staff. But Florida was on him hard. The Zook staff was on him. That's what happened is the Zook staff gets fired. He liked Larry Fedora a lot. Larry Fedora suddenly gone. Alabama comes in. It took Greg Madison and Urban Meyer basically to reel him back in the boat. But he always wanted to be at Florida, and he wanted to bring them back to national title level, which he did.
2 years removed away from the number one overall player in the country going to Jackson State.
That's true.
I do know,
and he plays for Colorado now.
And there are certain players or certain highly ranked players who aren't going to go to Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, or Clemson. But this one particular kind of sticks to me a little bit.
You know what you need to happen?
Quarterback.
You need Nico to be great.
Yeah.
You need somebody like that. Mm-hmm. You need Dante
Jackson Arnold even, because Oklahoma's not in that mix.
Dante Moore to be great.
Yeah.
At UCLA. The quarterbacks who made the non-traditional, well, not non-traditional, those are all traditional, traditionally good programs, but they made the choice that was not the popular choice right now. They didn't go to Ohio State, they didn't go to Alabama, they didn't go to Georgia.
And what's interesting is that, like, how many 5-star quarterbacks are there in a given class? 6, 5?
Yeah, 3, 4.
But there's only 4 or 3 slam dunk.
Right, and it's still a crapshoot. It's still like half don't work out. So
no, but I'm saying, like, from a numbers game, you're going to have only one player can go to Alabama, Georgia, and Ohio State, and then everybody else has to pick, and maybe USC. Right. But, like, it's like I would have understood if Dylan Raiola went to SC. Yeah. I wouldn't have written the column that I wrote if he did that. But, like, and I understand, too, that...
a quarterback going to play for Lincoln Riley, makes...
And there's a certain
sense.
connection to Georgia, too, with Matthew Stafford and the Raiola family. But I, look at Georgia...
You mean his dad snapped to him for all those years?
Yeah, but, his godfather, right? I think he's his godfather.
Dominic?
I think that Matthew Stafford
is Dylan's godfather. Oh, yeah. Well, that's a pretty hefty influence there.
It is, but...
Matthew Stafford. Hey, Dylan, you know what was awesome? Living in Athens. Here, let me show these photos that went viral on the internet of me and my future wife when we were students at Georgia. And by the way, I was the number 1 pick in the NFL draft. Things were pretty awesome in Athens.
Yeah, in 2009, when I was in high school. It was great. I don't know. So... But, to me, it's like you don't pick Georgia because you believe that to be the best possible place that you could get developed as a quarterback. I don't think Georgia, when I think cultivating and sharpening quarterback skills.
Well, you think USC, but they're pretty full up.
But I think about Ohio State because their last 2 quarterbacks have been taken in the first round. Alabama has multiple starters in the NFL right now. Like, Georgia's probably 3rd of the super teams as it pertains to
those. Yeah, and Clemson, if we're adding them,
probably even higher than Georgia, right?
Because they've got Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence.
They're probably higher than Ohio State in terms of the ones that are successful.
Right.
So it's just like Georgia wins this battle, and I think about what could have been, which is what, if he would have gone to Nebraska, and I know that there are, Arch Manning going to Texas last year, but, is there a more influential commitment on a single program? Maybe you can make the case that Arch Manning last year was more influential.
Well, Arch Manning had a very defined Pied Piper effect at Texas.
But think about
Dylan Raiola would have had a great Pied Piper effect at Nebraska. Yeah, absolutely.
In year 1 of a coach that's supposed to fix a program with relentless competence. Absolutely. I mean, I honestly am just I don't know. And here's the thing. I like to pretend that I'm for the underdog when, I'm the biggest talent. The talent
whore, you can say it.
Talent whore. I was going to say slut. But it is unfortunate, Andy, because it's there are so many fans who like those big time teams.
Yeah.
But there are a million other fans.
And this is why pro leagues have drafts.
And like Nebraska fans are like upset because this happened, but what does this mean for Mizzou fans or other programs that are in similar positions that kind of could have a shot if they got the right people, but just if you can't win that battle, if Nebraska can't win that battle, then what battle are they?
Now, here's
win?
the thing: if Matt Rule has been at Nebraska for 5 years and they've steadily gotten better, I'd say there's probably a good shot of him winning that battle.
Yeah.
He's brand new. They haven't been to a bowl game in how many years? I mean, this is not Matt Rule's fault. He walked into this thing. So
I'm not saying it's Matt Rule's fault. I think Matt Rule played it perfectly. They passed on another kid who was a top 500 player at the quarterback position in Nebraska, went all in on the guy.
You got to.
You have to. There's no. If he wouldn't have, that would have been like a fireable offense.
Absolutely.
Like he did what he had to do. I'm not blaming Rule. I'm just saying, like, in a sport that we are starved for parity, because we are, right? Like, we want different results.
Yeah.
I want to live in a world where we're doing this podcast, Andy, and you can't pick which from 5 teams who's going to win the national
exactly. And this is why I said before, the only way this stops or changes
is when this stops.
Is Nico winds up being great at Tennessee, or Dante winds up being great at UCLA. Some quarterback who did not make the obvious. Dante was going to go to Oregon.
That happens all the time, though, doesn't it? Like, I don't know. Think about, like, Zach Wilson was the top 5 pick at BYU, right? Like, I don't know.
Did he win the national title for BYU?
Oh yeah, but like, there's no shot. They could simulate the next 5 years 1,000,000 times, and UCLA is not winning the national championship.
I don't know, but maybe that convinces more good players to come there. Chip Kelly's recruiting philosophy might be the hindrance there. Although he did sign a 5-star quarterback, so maybe that's changing.
He did, and I think that we're going to look at UCLA as a fun team.
But like Tennessee, which has NIL set up very well,
right?
Which has good facilities. People seem to like Josh Heupel. Like, if they produce, like, let's say Joe Milton is good this year, winds up being a first-round draft pick. Which, by the way, if Joe Milton is good, he will be a first-round draft pick.
Just marginal, and then goes to the combine and does exactly what.
Oh, he's going to blow away the combine. No. But if he is good this season, he'll be a first round draft pick. Yeah. And then let's say Nico follows him and is very good.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, maybe those guys want to go to Tennessee.
It's just like, so when you think about it, let's just take away what happened with Raiola. Let's take away these.
I realize what I'm saying takes too long.
How long does that take? And if it does take that long, is it possible? Like, I think there's a certain window of. It takes 6 or 7 years, and I wrote about this with Brent Venables on Monday. Like, how long is Oklahoma willing to wait for them to be able to beat Alabama?
Oh, I think that is a very short window. Because Oklahoma is used to being good. They've been bad exactly one period in their history, and they will not accept.
But Lincoln Riley didn't have them able to beat Alabama.
He sure didn't.
Right? Well, 1 year they played a close game.
Yeah, he sure didn't have them.
So is the expectation to match Riley, or is the expectation...
No, the expectation is to match Kirby.
So that... with his recruiting philosophy is a major.
But here's the thing: at a certain point, we said, "No, how could anyone ever compete with Nick Saban?" And then Dabo did, and then Kirby did.
Yeah,
someone will come along; it'll happen.
Yeah, I'm trying to think because Clemson was a solid program before Dabo, right?
They were very mediocre. They were not as good as they should have been.
They had good teams, but they weren't great.
Right.
Georgia was a level up from that.
Right. Georgia was in a really good place, but. Good was the enemy of great.
Because it is interesting, and this might be an interesting story.
Yeah.
But if you look at programs that went from good to elite.
Yeah.
I don't even know if I count Georgia in this.
Okay,
Clemson's the only one, but what other programs match that profile?
Let me throw
Tennessee does.
What about Michigan?
Michigan does.
Because look at how Michigan is producing draft picks now.
And they have been.
Right.
Yeah.
And they have been steadily. And they can advertise that. And you're seeing them win some higher profile recruiting battles now in Michigan. They have the 5-star quarterback right now. Our guy Dane Brugler thinks he's a first round draft pick next year. We'll see what JJ does.
Oh, JJ. I thought you meant the recruit.
No, JJ McCarthy. So maybe they're the next one in line for this.
It could be. And that's the thing. It's like it is an interesting thought of if you had to duplicate what Clemson did.
Yeah.
Who are the 5 programs right now that aren't there yet that fit the
Penn
profile?
Penn State is producing NFL players at a good clip.
Yeah.
Olu Fashanu is going to be probably a top 10 pick next year.
Tennessee, Penn State, Michigan.
Yeah.
USC to a certain extent.
Yes.
I don't know if they're...
No. Well, listen. Lincoln Riley alone guarantees you a shot at the best quarterback in every class.
I just don't know how to look at programs like Oklahoma and Texas.
Well, Oklahoma, we're just going to see what happens. But
do they fit the profile of a team that could be elite?
Absolutely.
Or go from good to elite?
Absolutely, because they've been there before.
Or was Oklahoma already elite? They made the playoff 4 times.
They weren't elite compared to what wins the national title, because you saw the results of the games.
But I would say that Clemson's transformation under Dabo was far more impressive and dramatic than Georgia's under Kirby.
It was a harder road than Alabama's under Saban, than Georgia's under Kirby, than what anybody did.
And I don't know
harder to do.
if that can be duplicated.
Which
makes me think that Dabo Swinney is the best coach of the last 15 years.
Maybe, but it's easier to do it at Michigan than it would be at Clemson. It's easier to do it at Penn State than it would be at Clemson. It's easier to do it at USC than it would be at Clemson.
Yeah. Well, the thing that Clemson was a beneficiary of is they didn't have another already established team in their division.
You mean the team that won the national
State,
title in 2013?
Yeah, I mean, I guess.
They did.
But I'm saying...
They had to overcome that.
You know what my number one problem is, dude? I can't reconcile what the sport looks like today and then make good faith comparisons to 2010. I just can't do it. Like, it's not the same game to me. And maybe that's a flaw of mine, and I need to, open myself up a little bit. But, it's overcoming that Florida State team is not the same thing as overcoming Ohio State in your division.
No, that Florida State team...
And they were loaded.
They were.
But they weren't, getting top 100 players at this clip.
Yes, they were.
Go compare it.
Okay.
I guarantee you they don't.
All right. I believe you. But they were absolutely loaded.
They were.
That 2013 really Florida State team could have competed with Georgia or Alabama or Ohio State right now.
The greatest college football teams of all time. There's a few in the early 2000s that could hold.
Yeah.
I'm not saying the teams weren't good back then. I'm saying the immovable force of the repetition of the stacked recruiting classes makes it hard to overcome.
I had a mailbag question last week about Urban Meyer's statement that there's not a better roster in college football in Texas. And I had somebody ask, could Urban be right? I'm like, no, he's not right. Georgia and Ohio State have better rosters than Texas. It's not close. Well, if you just look at skill talent and top-end talent, like Kelvin Banks, their left tackle.
But their D-line is going to be nasty this year, right? And their offensive lines.
Okay, now here's the thing. Georgia, in their interior D-line, has 4 guys who will play in the NFL. At least. Maybe 5. Mm-hmm. They got a freshman.
Which will always be true no matter what.
Correct.
Yeah.
Texas has maybe 2, maybe 3 who will play in the NFL. But can they rotate? If somebody gets hurt, how deep are they? This is what Georgia has over almost everybody else. Alabama and Ohio State, to a certain extent, LSU,
not the same, though.
Are the only ones that can even come close to that.
But this is the first year that Texas actually has elite top-end talent on both sides of the line of scrimmage.
Correct.
Which makes me, I'm sorry, I'm getting...
I know you are.
I don't know. I can't do it. I don't know.
And when Oklahoma wins the Big 12 on the way out,
I was on the gambling channel on Vegas the other day. VSiN, yeah. The one that you got me on. And they asked me about over/under win totals, and they are both, because Texas and Oklahoma are both 9.5 this year, and Texas plays.
That's so high for what they were last year.
Texas plays Bama, and they said which 9.5 would you be more comfortable taking the over on? And I'm ashamed to admit it, but I said Texas.
Wow.
And I also think, and I'm saying this, and
I think we need to just write this down for later.
I also think that I said this to you over text, and I'm ready to expose myself on this podcast in a figurative way.
Is YouTube gonna shut down our channel after this?
I don't know what the spread of that Texas-Alabama game is.
Oh, boy. Here we go.
I'm saying, what's today? May 15th.
Yeah, okay.
I would not be shocked if Texas won that game.
I wouldn't be either.
I think I'm very close to picking them.
I wouldn't be shocked either. I'm going to pick Alabama. I can tell you that right now. Yeah. But I wouldn't be shocked if Texas won the game. And Texas played them so close last year, and the gulf between the two teams was a lot.
And maybe
wider.
the quarterback transfer situation at Alabama is in my head a little bit. Yeah. But I feel like...
Oh, no, it's in everybody's head.
Because if Texas doesn't win the Big 12 this year, it's an epic failure, right?
Absolutely.
So, we're at that point.
Oh, and by the way, they're not going to.
Dude, I'm going to have to be doing, push-ups. Okay, all right, so you're going to change the subject, but can I ask you this one question?
Yes, you can.
It's a would you rather, and I saw it on Instagram.
Oh, boy, here we go.
But I thought of you, and I wanted to save it to ask you.
Okay.
Would you rather be given $1 million in cash, or would you rather be paid $25,000 every time you completed a marathon?
I'll take the $1 million. I've run a marathon.
But you're like a big runner.
That's a lot of marathons, Ari.
I know, but you would be
That's
able to
40
knock them out.
marathons
But you would just
to even break even.
But wouldn't you just dedicate your life to like running them?
My body breaks down. I will say, when I ran the marathon that I ran, the guy I ran with for the last 10 miles was this guy named Phil. He was a house painter from Apopka, Florida. And he was...
Were you talking while you were running?
Yeah.
Really?
There's not much else to do.
You were out of breath?
I wasn't running that fast. By mile 16, I was not moving too fast. So Phil was in his 60s at the time, and he was attempting to run 50 marathons in 50 states in one calendar year.
So what I'm saying, you could do that. You're in like physical, like don't you run like 8 miles in the morning?
Some mornings, yeah.
Okay, so if you're just like routinely running 8 miles,
your body would break down so fast.
Dude, I feel like you were like way closer to being able to do this more often than anyone else I know.
To break even, I have to run 40 marathons.
I understand that.
And it would just be miserable.
But every single time every time, I think that at a certain point, wouldn't your body just become accustomed to it?
Not at my age.
Okay.
I think. Right. Well, I mean, Phil was in his 60s.
I thought you were going to say the 25 grand, so I'm a little bit shocked.
Because I've run a marathon. I think if I hadn't run a marathon, I'd be like, I'd do it.
Every single time you run a marathon, you get a $25,000.
Do you know what it feels like on mile 23? It feels like there's lightning striking your legs every minute.
I'm a person with other priorities.
Yeah. It feels horrible.
But I feel like, okay. Well, I feel like, how long's a marathon? 26.2 miles?
26.2 miles, yeah.
Okay, so if you routinely run 8, and that's just a normal Tuesday for you, I feel like you're already...
If you're training for a marathon, you never run more than 20 in the training at one time.
And then you just have to get out the last 6 at the end?
You got out the last 6 on race day, yeah.
Oh.
So...
I don't know, you just get like super thin and just never like quit all your box jumps and all the other
I guess
stuff.
I could eat everything I wanted.
And all you would do is just run 26 miles. I mean, you could probably knock out 40 in a 5-year period if you really dedicated yourself for it.
Oh, I could not. Yeah, I mean, I could knock out 40 in 2 years.
So if you knocked out 40 in 2 years, then every other marathon that you ran is just surplus.
So you run a marathon every 2 weeks. You stay conditioned for it. All right, I'm coming around to it.
I'm not trying to convince you. I
just think my body breaks down at some point. But as long as I get 41 before my body breaks down, I'm still making a profit.
Would you rather take $1 million cash or get 25 million, but you get dropped in a bowling alley and you have 10 attempts and you have to roll 2 strikes? And if you don't roll 2 strikes out of the 10, you get 0.
Right now, I'd get 0. I'm not that confident in myself as a bowler.
Okay, do you want to get to the ACC now?
Yeah, let's talk about the ACC. Would you rather, Ari, stay in a conference until 2036 that's going to pay you $30 to $40 million less than a conference that you feel like you have to compete with in recruiting and maybe you have a rival in that conference? Or would you like to have your lawyers go up against a document that they may not be able to beat, and if they can't beat it, it could cost you bajillions of dollars?
Well, how confident are we that they're going to beat this thing?
That's
the number one question. Like,
so we're talking about the grant of rights in the ACC and I will do the quick explanation of that. What that means is, back in 2013, the schools of the ACC signed over their media rights, so their rights to televise their home events, to the league. And so the league owns them until the end of this contract, which is 2036. And so the defense of the league, or the schools that are left in the ACC, if someone tried to leave, is we own those rights until 2036. You cannot sell them to someone else. So that's what we're talking about.
And then the lawyer's strategy would be that the landscape has changed. Like what how do you get it? It seems like a pretty cut and dry thing to me. So
they would argue it's unenforceable. I actually wrote a story about this about a year ago. And if everyone's checking out on The Athletic, you can. It's got a copy of the original ACC grant of rights and a copy of the Big 12 and Pac-12 grants of rights, where you can look at what are very simple documents that are very short. And the attorney I talked to, because he's the one who, while he was in law school, got a copy of the ACC grant of rights, which is not supposed to be something you can get a copy of. He's like, yeah, and because he does this sort of thing in his job. He's like, if you asked me to put one of these together, it'd be like 60 pages. These things are like 4. So it's really interesting.
When you think about the amount of money that's on the line, too.
Yeah.
Like, my contract with the first website I worked for, making $18,000 a year, was like 25 pages long.
Exactly. Lots of declarations.
Yeah.
But no, and so that's the situation. And so we have a name for this group of schools. I don't know. I believe it was Brett McMurphy who coined it. Ross Dellinger listed these schools in the story today. Nicole Auerbach and I have reported on a lot of this stuff over the last few months. But here's the Magnificent Seven, as Brett called them, which, now that it's got a sexy name, we can just go with that. So Florida State, Clemson, Miami, North Carolina, NC State, Virginia, and Virginia Tech. So those are the schools that would like to potentially do something different. I know that some of those have been meeting for years about doing something about this. I don't know how close they are. I get a sense from talking to people, and I talked to some people about this last week, they are closer to challenging it than previously believed. That they might challenge it sometime in the next few years. Because what they're talking about, so the ACC is meeting in Amelia Island, Florida this week. And what they're talking,
place to meet.
It is a beautiful Ritz-Carlton. You should get a hat.
Yeah, I actually was in Turks and Caicos with my wife, and I went to the Ritz-Carlton there.
Mm-hmm.
Bad hat selection.
Oh, this one has some good hats. Next time I'm covering that event, I'll get you a hat.
No, I have to go myself. That way I can be arrogant about it.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll get you.
I can be an elitist, because if you get it for me, then...
Yeah, we'll have you cover it next year.
Yeah.
But so they're meeting right now. They're talking about uneven revenue distribution as a potential solution for this. Here's my problem with that, just fundamentally. If I'm Syracuse, if I'm Boston College, if I'm Pitt, if I'm one of these other schools, I'm going, okay, what is making me get less do to help this league stay together, you not leave as soon as the grant of rights ends? Like, they're still gonna leave, so why would I give you more money? Also, I asked somebody from one of those schools that wants to leave, I said, would an incremental change in the amount of revenue you get from the ACC, so you get more and Boston College or Syracuse gets less, is that gonna cover the $30 million gap? And they're like, no. I was like, then what are you doing? What's the point?
Right. Yeah, and at the end, the writing's on the wall here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, this is like so deep in the weeds, but it's just like, think about how much money the legal fees are going to be.
Oh my God.
Like, I mean, I can't imagine what.
Yeah. Billable hours, undefeated.
And also, too, if I'm saying something stupid, tell me. But if you spend all that money to sue somebody and you win,
yes,
are you given back because you get the proceeds of whatever that happens, or do you still have to pay that money? Right, you still have to pay that money to the lawyers, even if they win the case.
In some cases, you can actually sue for your own legal fees, and then whoever loses has to pay.
So they would have to do that, because if they don't, and the legal fees are millions and millions and millions of dollars, you also have to account for those expenses when you're thinking about what happens next.
Absolutely.
Because you're doing it all for financial gain.
Yeah, and it's very messy. But the thought is, and somebody brought this up to me last week, if you look at the history of teams leaving conferences, they usually pay about 60%. That, I think, is what these schools are operating under. That is how it will go. That it'll be just like everybody else. That's what Texas and Oklahoma did. That's what when Maryland left the ACC for the Big Ten, when everybody left the Big East to go elsewhere. If they had to pay something, it was usually about 60% of what the rule said you should pay. I don't know if that's the case this time, because again, if somebody says your TV rights are still tied up, you're worthless as a property. And that, so the assumption that Florida State could just skate off to the SEC, or Clemson could just skate off to the SEC, the SEC is not going to touch anybody who's not available free and clear. That's why they're always, when they took Oklahoma and Texas, the wording of who talked to who first and how that went down was very carefully plotted, because they don't want anybody suing them. So I can guarantee you, if it's not all taken care of, Boston College is going to sue whatever school tries to leave. Syracuse is going to sue whatever school tries to leave.
Yeah, no, it's a major mess, and it's to me, Andy, I think, wow, 2036 is a really long time away, right?
Yes.
But at the same time, too, it's like, how long is it in the grand scheme of things? Like, is it a long time?
Too long for these people because none of these ADs will be the ADs at their schools in 2036.
Also, too, the amount of money that the other conferences are going to be bringing in could risk burying.
Well, and that's the thing. And if you look at it from the perspective of, say, North Carolina, who could be in the Big Ten or the SEC, or Florida State or Clemson, who feel like they deserve to be in the SEC or they fit better there, they're doing the math too. That it is $30 million over and over and over again. Now, an interesting comment. I don't know where Michael Alford was talking. I think it may have been the Orlando Sentinel he was being interviewed by. This is Florida State's athletic director, and he says, and I didn't think about this, but the Big 12 will have another negotiation in 6 years. Their next deal that starts, or I guess they'll negotiate. Yeah. Their next deal starts in 2025. So after 2031, they'll have another bite at the apple. There will still be 5 years left on the ACC deal.
Yeah, well,
at that point, the Big 12 deal, just because of inflation and everything else, might be better than... So UCF might have a better TV deal than Florida State at that point.
Oh, yeah.
And that pisses them off royally.
Can you imagine? Yeah, the complex of that and what that means. Yeah, that's crazy. I didn't even think about that.
So you've got to deal with all that. But
it seems to me that they'll come to a resolution at some point, because the closer you get to the grant of rights ending, is the sooner the writing's on the wall, and it's going to happen. It's going to happen.
Yeah,
there's no way. We could sit here right now and say there's no way it's getting to 20.
I mean, logically, there's no way it gets to it. But even if it got to it, there's no way they stay together.
It's like if you're married to somebody, they don't love you. Like, why are you? I mean, I guess money would be at play.
Exactly.
You want to stay with somebody that doesn't want to be with you.
There's no kids in this relationship. They're not staying together for the kids. So
it's all
that's when we're going to watch that one here over the next few months, because if you'd have asked me this a month ago, I'd have said I don't think anybody's going to challenge that grant of rights anytime soon. The more I hear, the more it sounds like somebody is going to step up and challenge it. So we'll see. We appreciate it because it's going to give us a lot to talk about in the show.
It's always the gift that keeps on giving.
It's never going to... We keep talking about all these evergreen episodes that we're going to do in the summer.
We don't have any windows. There's no window.
But I'll tell you one we're going to do. You remember we did our rewatchables last year?
Oh, yeah. Are we doing that again?
Yeah, there's a game. I talked to Max Olson about this.
Okay.
We got to do the 2001 Colorado-Nebraska game.
Oh, wow.
The one that broke Nebraska, and then Colorado, it was the last... great game they ever played.
Yeah, I don't really recall it, so I'd love to watch it again.
You will love it just from it'll be something new to you because you were fairly young.
But they kicked the crap out of Nebraska.
Destroyed them.
Yeah, I think I know what you're...
And Nebraska still ended up having to play for the national title. So that's...
I remember this.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, so I remember. I was 14, but I remember.
Yeah, that's one of them. We haven't done the Kick 6 yet, so that's another one. I like the 2010 Ohio State-Wisconsin game. I feel like that game's got...
Was that the one where Pryor scored at the end?
Well, Wisconsin won that game.
Oh, so that's not...
Yeah, this is a J.J. Watt Wisconsin team. Pryor was on that team. It was basically where it's like, Pryor may not be completely the answer here.
Oh, I don't really remember that one either. So I'd have to...
You may have covered it.
I might have, yeah. Wait, no, that's the only one.
I definitely covered it. I was there.
2010? Yeah, I mean, I must have been there. I can't remember. I don't remember what happened.
Well...
I don't remember the loss. I just remember the Pryor run one, and then I remember the Hail Mary that they hit them when Russell Wilson was the quarterback. Do you remember that one?
Well, that was Michigan State.
Didn't they beat Wisconsin on a Hail Mary, too?
Michigan State beat Wisconsin on a Hail Mary. Did Ohio State also do that?
Braxton Miller threw it. It might have been Nebraska. I can't remember. I think it was...
that was Nebraska, I believe. Yeah, Michigan State beat Wisconsin on the Kirk Cousins to Keith Nickel Hail Mary on a play
I think that Braxton Miller threw a pass from the 50, with 5 seconds left.
Okay, maybe
scored a touchdown.
Yeah, Wisconsin was playing a lot of good games back then.
Yeah.
Jeez, holy cow. All right, if you've got suggestions for that series...
It's scary to think it's been almost 15 years since that happened.
I know.
Think about how... I mean, isn't
we're
that
old.
Crazy?
Stop it, we're old. Yeah, no, if you've got suggestions for that, hit us up at Andy_Staples on Twitter, at Ari Wasserman. You come, in the chat when we do a live show. Let us know what you think we need to do in that series, because I had more fun doing that last summer.
Yeah, that was
than just about anything. So
because you get to watch football again.
Absolutely, and you get to watch old commercials, which I enjoyed a lot.
Yeah.
So, all right, guys, it's been fun. Ari and I are here for meetings. in Chicago. We're with all the other folks from the Athletics. We're going to have a lot of fun stuff this week. We will have a bunch of guests. We're going to talk a bunch of different teams. We're going to bank some shows for the next few weeks where we might be drilling down deep on one team, but we've also got everybody together. So we are going to have a lot to talk about, and we will talk to you again very soon.